Hello friends, what's up? It's Jamie here. Welcome back to another Fangirl Fridays video. These are the videos where I make all of my favorite things everyone else's problem. With International Trans Day of Visibility coming up, I wanted to share some of my favorite books by trans and non-binary authors. And with the increasing attacks on the trans community by this current US administration, it is more critical than ever to spotlight trans voices and stories. Because regardless of what this administration wants you to believe, trans people have always existed and will continue to exist with or without government recognition. So without further ado, let's get into the video. We're going to start with one of my personal favorite books, Dear Senderen by Akwaeke Emezi. This memoir is a series of candid and intimate letters through which Akwaeke Emezi chronicles their tumultuous career as a writer, their equally tumultuous relationships with their family and past lovers, and the transformative decisions and revelations that they have made about their body and gender. If you have watched enough of my book videos, then you are very familiar with Dear Senderen. I talk about this book any chance that I get ever since I first read it. It is in my top 5 favorite books of all time. Akwaeke Emezi's writing is as profound as it is accessible. Each word will blow your mind. Oh my god. And just make you reevaluate the way that you think about race and gender and sexuality and spirituality and love and writing itself. It is just that good. Definitely look up the trigger warnings for this book because it can get really dark and heavy and honestly a bit gruesome at times, but I really cannot recommend this book enough. I will always recommend the audiobook because Akwaeke Emezi's narration just adds another layer of excellence to the reading experience, but either way, you really can't go wrong. Next, we have Hijab Butch Blues by Lamia H. Throughout this memoir, Lamia re-examines the Quran through a queer and trans lens as they draw parallels between their life experiences and famous stories from the Quran. Each chapter highlights a different Islamic figure and illustrates how Lamia's intersecting identities as a queer non-binary Muslim don't cancel each other out. This is another one of my favorite books of all time. I love it so much. I love it because very often American queer folks, or honestly just Western queer folks in general, will try to assert that American or Western queer narratives are the only ones that matter and should exist in the world. That this is the way that you should be queer or trans, and that you aren't really queer or trans, or at least in an authentic way, if you stray from our ideas of how queer and trans people should exist in the world. For example, the idea that you need to come out in order to be authentically queer, which not only hurts queer people in our own backyards, but queer people everywhere of all cultures and religions. Coming out can be liberating and even life-saving for some people, but for others, it can be restricting or even dangerous. Every queer and trans person should be able to come out on their own terms, and every queer and trans person should be able to remain closeted without that diminishing their identity. Forcing anyone out of the closet so that you can fit them into your narrative of how queer and trans people should exist in the world, that's not liberation, it's cruelty. There's a plethora of reasons for why someone would want to remain closeted, and we are not entitled to those reasons unless that person themselves wants to elaborate. And Hijab Butch Blues outlines that perfectly. This book also does an incredible job of deconstructing the idea that you can't be queer and Muslim because, spoiler alert, queer Muslims do in fact exist, have always existed, and religious extremists who weaponize their religion to justify bigotry, they exist within every religion. This is not something that is unique or inherent to Islam, and the assumption that that's the case is very gross to me, kind of Islamophobic, if you ask me. Very weird behavior. That's weird. But anyway, I cannot recommend this book enough. It just, oh my god, it's so good. I feel like I'm not particularly knowledgeable about Islam as a religion. I feel like I learned so much reading this book. It has so much heart and humor, and it's just so excellent. Please go read it. I cannot recommend it enough. Next, we have Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. This graphic novel memoir details Kobabe's exploration of air non-binary and asexual identities through adolescence and adulthood. Kobabe chronicles significant life experiences, including first period, first relationship, struggling with gender dysphoria, and experiencing gender euphoria through narration and illustrations. This graphic novel is such a perfect blend of educational and personal. This was my first real introduction to beginning to understand genderqueer as an identity, as well as, is it pronounced Spivak? I hope I'm saying this correctly. The Spivak pronouns, and I also hope that I'm using them correctly. And Maya Kobabe conveys the message that coming out, should you choose to do so, is a continuous, sometimes lifelong process that evolves as you evolve as a person with so much humor and heart. I feel like I learned so much reading this book, but I also really related to Maya's experiences as an aspec person myself. It was really affirming to hear someone else talk about their ace identity, as I am the only aspec person I know, and so it was just very comforting. And the illustrations in this book are really beautiful, really great. I really, really, really recommend this book. Next, we have Life as a Unicorn by Amru Al-Qadi. This memoir recounts Amru's evolution from a God-fearing Muslim boy to a queer drag queen. In this book, Amru describes what it was like for them to balance their queer and Muslim identities, as well as their falling out with and eventual reconciliation with their mother. This book was so gut-wrenching and heartbreaking with everything that Amru went through, with the rejection from their family and their own self-hatred, and the things that they did because of that self-hatred just absolutely broke my heart. But as well as those things, this book is also about pride and joy and acceptance and everything in between. All of the messy, complicated, contradicting feelings that Amru felt throughout the points of their lives where they were still figuring themselves out, still figuring out their identities. And so for that, this book is very aptly named. Like the full title, it is very aptly named because it really is about all the in between emotions, and it is really incredible for that. Amru is able to dissect all of these conflicting but also intersecting emotions in a way that is very emotional but also very insightful. I really, really, really recommend this book. I especially recommend the audiobook because Amru narrates the audiobook themselves, and I feel like every time that an author is narrating their book, it just adds an extra layer to the reading experience, like with Your Senderen. So I really cannot recommend this book enough. Next, we have Some Assembly Required by Aaron Andrews. This memoir recounts Andrews' experience with coming out as a young trans person, including his struggles with getting kicked out of his private school, his physical and mental changes following his transition, and his relationship with a young trans woman and the subsequent heartbreak. I always shout out this book because it was the first book that I ever read by an openly trans author, and it was my first real introduction to the trans community as a kid. And so for that reason, it will always have a special place in my heart, and I will always bring it up in these videos. Next, we have How Far the Light Reaches by Sabrina Imbler. This memoir essay collection contains essays about various sea creatures and how those sea creatures relate to Imbler's experiences with their family, race, sexuality, and gender. Several of the essays also include necropsy reports, where Imbler analyzes their past queer relationships the way one might examine someone's cause of death. Similar to Genderqueer, this book is both informative and personal, informative about all the different sea creatures that Imbler discusses, but also personal with how they are able to relate those sea creatures to their lived experiences. I definitely recommend this book, but I do want to provide a essay trigger warning for the essay Beware the Sand Striker, because it discusses sexual assault in a pretty graphic way as it pertains to Imbler's experiences as well as those of Lorena Bobbitt. It is a great read, this book, but also just keep that in mind. But I really loved this book so much. Next, we have The Transgender Issue by Sean Fay. This nonfiction book details how trans people are disproportionately affected by issues pertaining to class, employment, housing security, police violence, prisons, and sex work. Framing the trans liberation movement within the context of social and economic activism, Fay makes the argument that trans liberation will improve society as a whole for everyone. In this book, Faye specifically cites how British media, newspapers, and television news are especially hostile to trans people. Faye does such an excellent job of breaking down how each of the issues I mentioned affect the trans community. I really, really, when I tell you I cannot recommend this book enough, I mean that wholeheartedly. This book is an absolute must read for understanding trans liberation. Like, this is such a foundational text. You absolutely need to read this book if you haven't already. Next, we have Before We Were Trans by Kit Hayam. This nonfiction book highlights the histories of trans and gender nonconforming people around the world, citing historical expressions and representations of the trans experience, such as gender nonconforming fashion and wartime stage performance, taking us through different eras and locations around the globe, such as Renaissance Venice and 17th century Angola and Edo Japan and early America. Like the transgender issue, this book is a cornerstone of trans literature, and I literally cannot recommend it enough. Though I will say, I do think that this book is a bit more complex than, say, a book like the transgender issue. Like, it required additional effort for my brain to kind of fully wrap my head around some of the analyses that were being made, but that could also totally just be a me thing. Still highly recommend this book though. Next, we have Refusing Compulsory Sexuality by Sharonda J. Brown. This nonfiction book is an analysis and critique of our sex-obsessed culture that diminishes and ignores asexuality and identities that fall within the asexual spectrum through a Black queer feminist lens. And I'm gonna say this right now, this book is already one of the best books that I have read so far this year, hands down. Sharonda J. Brown does such an incredible job of breaking down how anti-Blackness, white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, and cis heteronormativity disproportionately harm asexuals, especially Black asexuals. Brown dissects the ways in which Black asexuals are disregarded because of the hypersexualization and fetishization of Black bodies, and how asexuals are often gatekept from queer spaces because we aren't seen as queer enough, and that overall asexuals are often viewed as lacking in happiness, maturity, and humanity. As a demisexual, and as, again, like I said before in this video, the only aspec person that I know in my personal life, this book was so affirming and validating of my own experiences, but also incredibly informative. I know firsthand that there are so many people who don't even know what asexuality is, could not define it or explain it, even other queer people, and so they don't know like what the issues are that asexuals face because of that, especially for Black asexuals. So if that is you or someone you know, like I literally need you to read this book right now. From start to finish, this book is packed with critical information, not just for asexuals, but for everyone, because acephobia affects everyone, not just asexuals. So please, I am begging you, go read this book. It is incredible. It's fantastic. Oh my gosh, I love this book so much. Go read it. Next, we have Return Flight by Jennifer Huang. This poetry collection covers the complexity of family, inheritance, the body, individualism, trauma, beauty, and desire in ways that are so compelling and gut-wrenchingly honest. This is the first poetry collection that I've honestly read in a while, and this book made me remember why I love poetry. Jennifer Huang is a fantastic writer, and if you love poetry, I think you're gonna like this book. Next, we have Nevada by Imogen Binney. This novel follows Maria, a trans woman who steals her ex-girlfriend's car and embarks on a road trip of self-discovery. She also has a lot of heroin with her. Along the way, Maria meets James Hansen in Nevada, who Maria immediately recognizes is trans, but James themselves has not realized this yet. Maria is a really interesting character, and getting to live in her head and experience the inner workings of her mind was really very interesting. I really enjoyed this book. I personally recommend the audiobook because it's narrated by Imogen Binney. Again, you know I love me a book that is narrated by the author. I also recommend reading the afterword so much because it just added so much to my understanding of the ending. Next, we have Freshwater, also by Akwaeke Emezi. This semi-autobiographical novel tells the story of Ida, a girl with multiple Obanje, deities from the Igbo religion, living within her. The story is a fragmented account of Ida's life, following her trauma of being SA'd repeatedly, struggles with self-harm, and the exploration of her sexuality and gender identity. With a big trigger warning for SA in mind, this book is an incredible exploration of mental health and identity, drawing from the incomparable Akwaeke Emezi's own experiences of having multiple personalities and existing as an Obanje. And listen, you already know for me rambling off about Dear Sendinen that I love Akwaeke Emezi's writing. I love everything that they write, and this book was no exception. It was so fucking good. I can't believe that this was their debut. Actually, no, I can't believe it. I was about to say, I'm like, I can't believe this was their debut novel. No, I can believe it. I can believe it. It's Akwaeke Emezi, of course. Like, of course, it's incredible. So if you are able, please read it. Next, we have Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars by Kai Chang Tom. This surrealist novel tells the story of an unnamed trans woman who is a kung fu expert, a compulsive liar, and leaves home at a young age to go live on the Street of Miracles with other trans women, who become like a family to her. But after one of the femmes is killed and nobody seems to give a shit, our protagonist, joins a gang where they attack men in the street as retribution. What I found so interesting about this book is that it is both a surrealist novel while also being a memoir. Kai Chang Tom basically explained that there are characters and plot points that are based on her life, but they are greatly exaggerated by the novel's surrealist elements. And I thought that was so interesting, and I just loved this book so much, especially the protagonist. She is a really interesting character. I really liked her a lot. I kind of wish that the book was longer because I was enjoying her narration so much, but for the story that this book was telling and the arc that our protagonist goes through, I do think that it was like the perfect length. And I also have to say, like, this is one of those books where, like, I feel like me talking about it is not doing it justice. Like, you just kind of need to read it for yourself. It is an incredible story of found family and sisterhood and healing from abuse. I literally cannot recommend it enough. Please go read it. Next, we have Felix Ever After by Kason Calendar. This YA romance follows Felix Love, a black trans teen who falls in love for the first time while grappling with his identity and contending with an anonymous student who starts sending him transphobic messages. This is a very sweet story of first love, and the way that this book handles gender identity and coming out was very impactful, and I really enjoyed it. Next, we have One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This romance novel follows August Landry, a 23-year-old cynical bisexual who moves to New York City in an effort to escape her pseudo-detective past. August does not particularly believe in love, that is, until she meets Jane Sue on the subway, a punk butch lesbian from the 1970s who is trapped in the present day. August must now revive her detective skills to help Jane get back to her original time period before it is too late, all the while working to save the restaurant that she works at from gentrification, reconciling with her past, and opening herself up to love from her queer roommates and Jane. I love this book. I love this book so much. It is my favorite Casey McQuiston book that I have read so far, and it is one of my favorite books that I read last year. Holy shit, this book was so good. It absolutely blew me away, completely rocked my world. August and Jane, they are literally everything to me. Literally, oh my god, no, I would die for both of them. Actually, I would. I love them so much. I am so glad that the edition of the book that I have has Jane's bonus chapter because it just made me fall in love with the both of them even more. Like, their love for each other literally had me in tears multiple times. It was amazing. The parts about Jane's family and August learning to open herself up to Jane and her roommates and her community had me so deeply in my feelings. I cried. I cried a lot. It's also worth mentioning that this book isn't just a romance, though it is also worth mentioning that the romance is absolutely fan-fucking-tastic, but this is also a story about community and found family. Thank you, Luna, for shaking my camera. That was my cat, Luna. But yeah, it's about community and chosen family. Like, I absolutely adored Mila and Nico and Wes and Isaiah and their relationships with August and Jane. Those were so beautiful to witness. This was truly one of the best romances I have ever read. Please, 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 please do yourself a favor. Go read this book if you haven't already. It is well worth it, I promise. Next, we have The Pairing, also by Casey McQuiston. This romance novel follows Theo and Kit, two bisexual exes who bet on who can sleep with the most people when they find themselves on the same European food and wine tour. This is their way of being like, yes, absolutely, we are completely and utterly over each other, and there are absolutely no lingering feelings whatsoever. This book was so fucking good. Holy shit. It screams vacation European holiday. It's sexy and silly. It's a second chance romance, which is a personal favorite trope of mine. Theo and Kit are such incredible characters, and their chemistry was just completely off the charts. The first half of the book is told from Theo's perspective, and then the second half is Kit's. And oh my god, I literally died at the POV switch because one, I didn't know it was going to happen, but then the POV switch like turns out to be such a game changer and reveals so much, and it's so excellent. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil it, but it was amazing. And the way that this book also like is like broken up by each stop of Theo and Kit's food and wine tour, and is paired with food and or like wine recommendations for like each part. It was just like the pun intended, the like icing on the cake. Like, it was just such an excellent touch. Like, I love little details like that. It's like it just added so much to the book already. Like, oh my god, I love this book to pieces. So good. What an incredible read. I also have a signed version of The Pairing, because I actually met Casey McQuiston at the end of last year. They were such a lovely human, by the way. I just had to mention that. Such a lovely human. It'd be great if I could speak English. Such a lovely human. We gushed over our mutual love of Talia Hibbert books, and it was fantastic. I love them, and I love their books. They are all so good. Next, we have I Kiss Shara Wheeler, also by Casey McQuiston. This YA romance follows perfectionist Chloe Green, a high school senior who is vying for the spot of valedictorian. Her only competition is prom queen Shara Wheeler, the principal's daughter who is adored by all, except for Chloe, but their rivalry takes an unexpected turn when Shara kisses Chloe and then suddenly vanishes. Wanting to beat Shara fair and square for valedictorian, Chloe must team up with Smith, Shara's longtime quarterback boyfriend, and Rory, Shara's next-door neighbor with a crush on her, to decipher the clues that Shara left behind and find her before graduation. While this may technically be my third favorite Casey McQuiston book of the ones that I've read, I absolutely still love it to pieces. That does not mean that it's like, oh, I dislike this. I love this book. I love this book so much, especially Chloe as a character. She is one of my favorite book protagonists just ever. She reminds me so much of a character that I've written, and it was just so fun to be in her head. She was so delightfully insufferable at times, and I ate it up. I loved it so much. What's also really special about this book is that it is a love letter to the queer kids growing up in the Bible Belt states with very conservative Christian upbringings. Without spoiling too much, everyone in this book is gay or trans or both, and it is absolutely amazing. I love this book so much. Please go read it. It is so sweet and funny, and just I love it so much. Oh my gosh. Casey McQuiston is just such an incredible writer. I love him so much. My copy of I Kiss Shara Wheeler is also signed because I brought it with me when I met Casey last year, and I just love their books so much. So good. And last but certainly not least, we have Iron Widow by Shirin J. Zhao. This YA fantasy sci-fi novel is a reimagining of the rise of China's first and only female emperor, Wu Zetian. Set in a futuristic version of medieval China, male pilots are assigned female concubine pilots to pilot chrysalises, these giant transforming robots that battle mecha aliens that lurk beyond the Great Wall. However, the concubine pilots usually die from mental strain in the process. So in this book, we follow 18-year-old Zetian, who offers herself up as a concubine pilot to assassinate the male pilot that is responsible for her sister's death. But when Zetian successfully kills the pilot and comes out unscathed, she becomes known as an Iron Widow, a kind of pilot that can sacrifice boys to power up the chrysalises, not the other way around. To tame her unnerving yet invaluable mental strength, she is paired up with Li Shumin, the greatest and strongest but also the most controversial of the male pilots. But Zetian will stop at nothing to leverage their combined power and infamy to obtain more power and to find a way to stop more girls from being killed. I loved this book so much. Zetian is one of my favorite YA fantasy protagonists, up there for me with Bree Matthews and Voya Thomas, which is saying a lot if you know about my undying love, especially for the Legendborn cycle, but also for the Blood Like Magic duology. That is very high praise. I love those girls so much, and I love Zetian. She is such a cool and fascinating character with so much nuance. Shirin J. Zhao did a really good video breaking down some of that nuance. I highly recommend watching it, and it really just it shows in the book as well. I can't say that I was particularly invested in either of her love interests, but the polyrep was definitely really good, and I am so excited to read Heavenly Tyrant. I can't wait to see where the story goes. If you support women's rights and women's wrongs, I think you're gonna like this book. In classic Jaime fashion, I have mismanaged my time, and so I am recording the rest of this video via voiceover. But before I wrap up this video, I wanted to quickly go through my trans author TBR. This is by no means an exhaustive list. These are just the immediate books that I plan to read within the next couple of months by trans and non-binary authors, starting with We Have Always Been Here by Samra Habib. This is a queer Muslim memoir that is an exploration of faith, art, love, and queer sexuality. Next, we have I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shreya. In this memoir, Vivek Shreya explores how masculinity was imposed on her as a boy and continues to haunt her as a girl. Next, we have Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This romance novel tells the love story of Alex Claremont Diaz, the fictional first son of the United States, and Prince Henry, a fictional British prince. And while I hate the US government, I did really enjoy the Red, White, and Royal Blue movie, and so I do want to read the book. And as I've already established in this video, I love Casey McQuiston. Next, we have Heavenly Tyrant by Shirin J. Zhao. This is the sequel to Iron Widow, and as you may be able to tell, as I previously established in this video, because I loved Iron Widow, I am so excited to read the sequel and just see Zetian just absolutely fuck shit up, and I'm so excited. And last, but certainly not least, to nobody's surprise at this point, we have Somadina by Okweke Emezi. Are we surprised? No, we are not. This fantasy novel is set in a magical West African world that follows a teenage girl who must save her missing twin while also learning to navigate her magic. Again, are we surprised? It's an Okweke Emezi book. Of course I'm gonna read it. Come on now. Alright, that is all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite trans-authored books are. I am always looking for new recommendations for my ever-growing TBR, especially fantasy recs. I am literally so excited to read Heavenly Tyrant and Somadina, so please drop any trans-authored fantasy recs that you've got. Once again, that is all I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I upload Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, except when I don't, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys!